it might be worth it to delve into it. One of the Shvatim of Yankov, one of Yankov's kids, his name is Yissachar. And we know that in the Torah it's spelled with two shins. And the shaila is, how do you pronounce it? Usually, I imagine the Baal Koreh here pronounces it every time he lanes it as Yissachar. The second sin is silent. Well, we're going to see a number of shittas about it. To the mitzvah, some interesting discussion. You see, diktuk is not something which is widely learnt. So you just sit there and pass it through to that side. Bechlal, especially not in the Chassidish world, there is a tradition that because of the Enlightenment movement throughout in the 1700s, 1800s, and they were using Nach, even Chumash, Moses Mendelssohn made the translation into German, and that was causing people to delve into grammar, into language, into other languages, and really veer them and steer them away from Yiddishkeit, chas v'shalom, as unfortunately is what happened to many. Apparently, that's why many of the Chassidim in Poland, they dafka thwarted the regular pronunciation of the words. So, instead of saying nu, like hanachnu, it's hanachni, that there was a deliberate fight. They deliberately made changes in the pronunciation of words and the diktuk as well, in order that that people really shouldn't get into that and follow that, because it was a trap, a dangerous trap, which unfortunately had been proven all too many times.
Moving to what? To make people fry?
Yeah. The Vilna Gaon, it's well known, said that anything that you're missing in Limud HaChol, you're missing 10 times that in Torah. Right? Whether it's maths or science or this or that. And therefore, he was, he was encouraging people to explore other chachmas because it only helped you in Torah. Now, by him was definitely kavanah l'shem shamayim. The Frierdiker Rebbe writes in one of his rishimas, one of his diary type of things that he wrote, and he writes wondrously about the wisdom of the Vilna Gaon, how the Vilna Gaon excelled in all the Shiva Chachmas and all the 7 wisdoms, and particularly in music, etc., etc. By the Vilna Gaon was definitely Shem Shamayim, but you had people in Vilna that they were maskim, they were from the Enlightenment movement. Incognito, they were dressed up, camouflaged, as some of them as great Talmidei Chachamim. And secretly, they would convince people to go explore their secular studies in Germany, in Berlin. And their kavanah obviously was that these people should become fry. One of the few people that nichnas b'shalom v'yotze b'shalom, that went in and out with peace, was Rav Moshe Meislish. Rav Moshe Meislish was originally a student of the Vilna Gaon, and he was a brilliant boy, and he also went to Berlin. Das ist gewend der Steiger, it was normal for those that were particularly bright to go and expand their horizons, to go and explore. And he went, and Baruch Hashem, he came back b'shalom, but because of that, he actually learned numerous languages, and he became very fluent with French and German. And that's why years later, during the war of Napoleon and the Tsar, the Alter Rebbe had him be a spy, a translator for Napoleon, but in truth, he was to steal the secrets. And this was part of the Alter Rebbe's work, to have the Tsar win the war, and because of that, the Tsar actually sent the Alter Rebbe his appreciation. The Alter Rebbe was awarded, a special citizen, etc., etc. So Moshe Meislish was one of the very few that came back b'shalom. It was a very unfortunate time in history. But before then, going way back when, diktuk was very big in Yiddishkeit. The truth is, amongst the early Rishonim, specifically the Spanish Rishonim, you had those that were medaktikim, grammarians, and those that were meshoirim, poets, and they wrote songs and shira. Now, the two things are very much connected. A beautiful poem has correct rhymes and correct diktuk, but poetry, besides for being an art of the mind, is also an art of the heart. It's philosophy, and there's deep in Yonim. Reb Shmuel Hanagid, who lived in Spain, in southern Spain, he was one of the earliest of the Rishonim. In fact, the Raivitz Hanagid, the prince. So he actually wrote. He was in Yissachar. He excelled in everything, besides for being a general of war. He used to go, and he was a fascinating fellow. He was also a poet. He has a poem. He wrote love poems as well. It's no secret. What? The Ravid says he was the first of the Rishonim. No, the Ravid, not the Ravid on the Rambam. The Ravid of the Seder HaKabbalah says that the first three Rishonim was Shmuel Anagid in Spain, and Rav Nissim Gaon and Rabbeinu Hananel in Tunisia, in North Africa.
Which one?
Rabbeinu Hananel and Rav Nissim Gaon in Al Kairun in North Africa. Now it's interesting. The Chidah says if Rav Nissim Gaon is the first of the Rishonim, like the Ravid contends, why was he called a Gaon? And the Chidah says because he was in touch with Rav Hai Gaon, who was in Bavel, and he wasn't stam in touch. He was a close Talmud. Although the Pashas say it never met, we don't have any records they met. It was only through written communication. But he was so close to his teacher that he was given his teacher's name. Achsidish Inyan. You know, when you walk down the street, people look at you as a representative of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So the Chidah says that, that's why Rav Nissim Gaon, he really wasn't part of the Goinim. He had the name because he was so close to Rav Hai Gaon, who had the name. Anyhow, so Shmuel Anagid, he writes a poem, a love poem, and he says that the man tells the woman how much he loves her, and the woman says, really, when you look into my eyes, all you see is yourself. Because when you look into her eyes, you look in the pupil, it reflects you. So you tell me how much you love me, but when you really look deep in my eyes, all you see is a reflection of yourself. It's a cute idea, and he puts it in a beautiful poem. So you have the Meshorim. Now when it comes to the masters of piyutim and poems, it's really a different group of people than are the masters of grammar. Although the two chachmas are connected, when it comes to poems, the greatest, they would say the three greatest Spanish Rishonim of poetry would be Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, the author of the Kuzri, who was a great philosopher as well, and he was a Talmud of the Rif. Reb Moshe Ibn Ezra around the same time, and before them Reb Shloime Ibn Gabirol. Reb Shloime Ibn Gabirol, who was actually a student of Shmuel Hanagid. Shmuel Hanagid paid for him to come to southern Spain. You come, I'll make a koil, I'll pay for you to come.
Was a writer also.
Exactly. He wrote lots of things, and in Piyutim and Slichus, it happens. He made a goylem. He made a goylem, a girl, to cook for him. He was the one he made a goylem. He didn't have time to be in the kitchen. He made a goylem to cook for him, a girl. The Shas, why do you make a girl? What, the man can't cook? Apparently not. Apparently it's not the same. Even amongst the goylems, the women know how to cook better than the men. No, it's not Bishul Akum. The Shaila, things don't have to be Bishul Yisrael. They just can't be Bishul Akum because you're worried what it might lead to. As long as the person's not a goy, if an animal cooked something, it would be okay too. It's not so much to Bishul Yisrael. Anyhow, but there's a Shaila if a goylem can shecht, and if a goylem dies, what type of tumah it gives over. The Rebbe, in fact, once spoke if a goylem has chiyus hamesim. The Chacham Tzvi wants to know if it could be part of a minyan. Anyhow, but Sakaponim, by the way, the Shloime Ibn Gabirol, he had a very sad end. I don't have much in the paper, so I got to get... Rav Shloime Ibn Gabirol, according to many, he was 28, 29 years old when he was walking down the road in Granada, I think it was, in southern Spain, and there was an Arab academic who was jealous of the wisdom of this Rav Shloime, and he killed him. And he buried him in his backyard, under a tree. It happened to be that this tree, because of the body, the tree ended up, through fertilization, it gave its fruit very early before any other trees in the city. Word got around, and the investigators, they dug up, they want to see what's going on, what magic tricks are going on. Could be he poured Basar B'Cholov, it's important in old Sfarim, if you pour Basar B'Cholov, it helps. And they found the dead body. They found the body. And the Arab received his retribution. So Akaponim, when we speak about the greatest Meshorim, these are usually the big three. Reb Shloime Ibn Gabirol, and just after him, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi and Reb Moshe Ibn Ezra. But then you have the Medaktikim, those that were involved in Diktuk, and the truth is that this is really, it's a different group of people. A little earlier in Spain, we're talking about the 900s in Spain, There was a fellow by the name of Chistoi ibn Shaprut. Chistoi ibn Shaprut. He's famous because of his connection with the kingdom of the Khuzars, the Khazar kingdom, the kingdom of the Khuzars that converted to Yidden. So he was involved with them, and he lived in Cordova, and he wanted to transform Cordova into mamish, a center of Torah learning, because at that time there was Bavel was still on fire, and in the middle of the 900s, you have Rav Shredo Gaon, Rav Hai Gaon was a young man. I mean, Bavel was still the center, but he wanted to make Cordova, Spain, into something big. He was a very wealthy man, and he paid for people to come far and wide. I'll take care of you. Come and learn by me. And particularly, he brought two grammarians, two great grammarians, Menachem ben Saruk, who Rashi quotes often in Chumash, and the other one was Reb Doinash ibn Labrat. He brought both of them. They both came to Cordova, and they were both supposed to kochzich in Lashon Kodesh and in Diktuk and teach, and in, because Spain was a cultural center, a place of the arts, language, and literature. And these two were incredible in Diktuk. The problem is they did not get along. There was an unfortunate fallout, a heavy fallout between the two. It started off with Machlokes and Diktuk, but then it became personal, particularly between the students. You see, this Reb Doinash ibn Labrat before then had learned by Reb Sadia Gaon in Bavel. Reb Sadia Gaon passes away 942. This is a couple years after that. So this Reb Doinash had been a student by Reb Sadia Gaon. And Menachem ben Saruk argued on Reb Sadia Gaon on many points. And Reb Doinash was not ready to accept that. And mamish, there was a war, a major war. Both of them were invited. I don't remember where he started off, but both of them were invited by Chistoi ibn Shaprut to take residence in Cordova, but things got really messy. And the machlokes lasted for a long time, at least the machlokes in Diktuk. Rabbeinu Tam wrote a sefer, Ha'achros, deciding who was Rabbeinu Tam. The Chayr was in France, and France wasn't a center so much of Diktuk, The Baalei Tosfos didn't learn other disciplines, What did Rabbeinu Tam do for Parnas? He was a banker. Contrast that to the Ramban and the Rashba in Spain, who were doctors. In Spain, they learned astronomy, medicine, philosophy. In France and in Germany, it was Nigla, maybe Kabbalah, but not really other Goyish disciplines. But Rabbeinu Tam was a big medactic in grammar, and he wrote a sefer being Machriya, deciding who's right and where. But he leans more towards Menachem ben Saruk, like Rashi, like Rabbeinu Tam Zayda Rashi. But then you have the Radak. The Radak's father, Rabbi Yosef Kimchi, was also a major medactic, and he dafka felt that Doinash ibn Labrat was right. So it remained a big debate for hundreds of years. So things were happening then. Way back when Diktuk was a major chachma, and you had people that specialized. What you're a grammarian, a medactic gadol, a medactic otzim, different levels of grammarians. But that's what it was a whole chachma, and there's lots of tricks and rules, and it gets quite complicated. Anyhow, having said that, over time it dwindled down. It dwindled. In fact, the great Ramah in Poland, was criticized by the Marshal, who was also in Poland. The Marshal writes that the Ramah didn't know his diktuk, and therefore his glosses are hard to read. He makes fun of the Ramah not being well versed in diktuk. So it's it's going back hundreds of years that some people kocht in it, and the average person didn't. Now in Eretz Yisrael, with Ivrit and everything, so you have people that it's come up again. But still, generally, it's not widely studied. What?
What's the basis for that?
Why is it important? The Tzemach Tzedek was once asked by his son, the Rebbe Marash. He says, "Tata, there's a Sforim seller coming to Lubavitch. I want to buy some new Sforim." So his father said, you know already the Sforim you have. So the Marash said, "Tata, you always buy Sforim when the guy comes, and you have a huge library. Do you know all your Sforim?" The Tzemach Tzedek said, "Yeah, I do. Test me." So the Rebbe Marash went to one of the shafers, the shelves, and he took off 4 or 5 Sforim, each of them starting with a mem. So the Sforim had no relation to each other, but they all started with a mem. So apparently the Tzemach Tzedek had his library, it was Aleph Beis coded. And One of the Sforim he took off was Mesilas Yesharim from the Ramchal, and the Tzemach Tzedek said this is a Musar Sefer, and he said off by heart, word for word, whichever part the Reb Marash chose. And the same thing with Mesilas Chochmah was a Kabbalah Sefer. And some of the books were Sforim of Diktuk, Mesiris HaMesiris from Rabbi Leo Bachur. And the Reb Marash said, I was amazed, B'chlal, that my father Mamish knew everything word for word, but particularly from the Diktuk Sforim. And he said, I asked my father Tzemach Tzedek that Chasidim B'chlal aren't so involved in Diktuk, we don't daven particularly with the saying the words Al Pi Diktuk. Obviously the Alter Rebbe wrote it, but the way we pronounce it, we don't kochsich in the rules of Diktuk, and neither l'chayra by learning the Torah. And the Tzemach Tzedek said no. Tefillah l'chud, kriya b'Torah l'chud. Davening is one thing, learning in the Torah is something else. Exactly. So the Rebbe Marash, when he asked the question, he said, B'chlal Chassidim aren't medayik, not in davening, not in reading the Torah. And Tzemach Tzedek said no. Tefillah l'chud, davening is one thing, kriya b'Torah l'chud is something else.
Is that in kriya or like learning Chumash?
No, reading. Yeah. Although there's a ma'aser that Tzemach Tzedek, it was once on Simchas Torah that Tzemach Tzedek himself was learning the Bereshis. And he says, V'ha'aretz hoisa, soihu, v'boihu. He said it with a beis instead of v'voyu. So someone calls out, Rebbe, it's voyu. The Tzemach Tzedek didn't go back. He just continued. And afterwards he said that why do you b'chlal read Bereshis and Simchas Torah? There's a tshuva that Advaz. I don't know if he quoted it, but the reason is because the Satan says, Eibishter, you see, the Yidden finished Zois HaBracha, and now they're busy partying. They're done with the Torah. They've moved on. So right away, to make sure there's no such kitrug, we start Bereshis. So Tzemach Tzedek said, since we're only laying it for that reason, you don't have to be so medayik. But B'chlal, you would. So the two stories are consistent. B'chlal, you would. And yeah, so that's really what it's about laning. The shail is also by davening. Although the Tzemach Tzedek did say davening l'chud and kriya b'Torah l'chud, the Alter Rebbe does say, he writes in that letter that when you daven chas v'sholem to miss out a letter or mispronounce, you have to say the words correctly. So you might imagine you should pronounce it the correct vocalization. But either way, this is the story. So we come to the deal of Yissachar and Yisaschar. So the minig in Lubavitch is we always read it Yissachar. We always read it Yissachar with one sin. And there's a reason Al Pi Kabbalah. In fact, the Rebbe once quoted from his father, the Bleivik, there's a reason Al Pi Kabbalah why we do that. And that's because Yissachar was a man of learning. Yissachar were men of Torah, men of learning. Yoidei bina leitim, they were the knowledge, they were the ones that taught Torah. In fact, the Gemara says in Yuma, if you ever see a Talmud Chacham who's paskening, he's either from Shevet Levi or from Shevet Yissachar. That's a Gemara in Yuma. So Al Kopanim, Yissachar are the men of Torah. And there's two parts of Torah, there's Nigla and there's Nister. And each one is hinted to by one of the shins. One of them refers to Nigla Doraisa, and the other is Kabbalah Pnimius. And since Kabbalah's Nister is hidden, therefore we don't pronounce the second shin. That's what I think the Rebbe quoted from his father, the Bleivik. So in Lubavitch, we always just say Yissachar, always. But we're going to see there's many opinions about it. And the Machloikas began about 1100, 1200 years ago. If you really want to study the history of Diktuk, you see, I don't know that much of Diktuk, but I like history. And the history of Diktuk, you really have to go to the city of Tiberia. And there were two families in Tiberia. You're talking in the year 800s, 900s. There were two families. One was called Ben Naphtali, and one was called Ben Asher. Some say the Ben Asher family came from Shevet Asher, and the Ben Naphtali came from Naphtali, but that was the name of their families. And they were known as the Baalei Mesiris. They had lots of traditions in the Lashon Kodesh languages. Some tiny that the shapes of the Nekudas were really carved by them. Because it was always Baal Peh, right? Nekudas, obviously, the Yidden always knew how to pronounce the words. It was given, but Pashtus, the pronunciation was given to Moshe and Har Sinai, but it was part of the Torah Baal Peh. It was never written down. If it was never written down, you wouldn't have any shapes, right? The shal is the names they could have had. the names, Kometz Patach they could have had, but the shapes, and some say the shapes came from this time period, about 1100 years ago in Tiberia. And who knows, I wasn't there. But that's what many say. But they were the Baalei Mesiris, the people of tradition, of the Lashon Kodesh language. And there were many debates between Ben Osher and Ben Naphtali. The Rambam famously writes in his Hilchos Sefer Torah, the Rambam writes that there's lots of questions in how to write a Sefer Torah, but I based my Sefer Torah on a Sefer Torah that I saw, which was written or checked by Ben Osher himself, a couple centuries before the Rambam. And the Rambam says, so therefore it's perfect. it's unquestionable. And therefore I copied my Sefer Torah based on that, and that should be how every Sefer Torah is made. So you can imagine that this guy, he knew a thing or two. The Rambam says it. But Ben Osher had many debates with Ben Naphtali. The first debate that they had is in the beginning of Chumash, in Trop actually. Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or. Is there meant to be a munach under Yehi? Or is Yehi Or meant to have a dash, a makaf between the two, making it one word, and therefore the Trop's only under Er? Ben Osher Tainad Yehi has a Trop. Vayomer Elokim Yehi should have a munach under the Yehi. And Ben Naphtali Tainad, no, there's no Trop under Yehi. Yehi Er is like one word, and therefore in theory there's a makaf, like a dash connecting Yehi to Er. It's like one word and the Trop's under Er. And this was the first debate that they had right in the beginning of Chumash. Another debate in grammar is when you have a word that starts with a yud with a chirik, like Yisrael. If there's a lamed before, how do you pronounce it? Is it Le Yisrael? You have a shva under the lamed and a chirik under the yud. That's Ben Osher. Ben Naphtali said no. You put the chirik under the lamed and nothing under the yud. Li Yisrael, not Le Yisrael. Li Yisrael. So that was another debate they had. But they also debated about Yissachar. How do you pronounce Yissachar? Ben Osher said the second sin is silent. He didn't give a reason. We don't know if it's because of its Reblevic reasons. We'll see some other reasons in a moment. But Ben Osher is very well known that he paskin that it's just one sin. But Ben Naphtali says two sins. Ben Naphtali said two sins. Ben Naphtali, though, didn't say how you pronounce it. He just said two shins. How do you pronounce Yissachar with two shins? You think it's Yisaschar. We're going to see there's another way to pronounce it. Lav davka, it's Yisaschar. You could pronounce it with two sins, perhaps in a different way as well. But Azay is given the machlekes. Ben Naphtali said you pronounce both sins. There's no silent sin. Ben Osher said one sin. B'chlal, who do we paskin like? Ben Naphtali was also, these were both big people. So there was a very big medactic, a grammarian, 500 years ago. Menachem di Lunzonu was his name. And I think he starts off in Italy, but he goes to Eretz Yisrael. He got himself in major trouble. He wrote some critical things about the son of the Ramak of Moshe Cordovero. He argued on the Arizal, and he said, listen, all the things I'm arguing on the Arizal are things the Arizal said before he had Ruach HaKodesh. I mean, the guy said he was, he got himself into some very hot water. But the Chidah says about him, he was a medactic otzum, not stam a medactic. Not stam a medactic godel, a medactic otzum, a powerhouse of a medactic. And he wrote a sefer Torah. He wrote a number of songs. One of them is Torah, and in it he says that there are many debates of Ben Osher and Ben Naphtali. So he's writing this 500 years ago, a little less, and he says that we always paskin like Ben Osher, as if a bas kol came down from heaven and said, Ben Osher versus Ben Naphtali, halacha ke Ben Osher. So if it's Takim, Menachem di Lunzonu, he was a medactic in the Zeiten von Darizal. So Loitem, according to him, so too by the debate of Yissachar versus Yisaschar, perhaps, it would be a no-brainer. You'd pass like Ben Osher, Yissachar. And that's what we do. So the debate started off 1100 years ago in Tveria. But it hasn't ended. It hasn't ended. Okay, with this Hagdama L'chayor, we can start learning. So if you take the sheet, the first thing on the sheet is the Rashbam. In Parshas Vayetze, we know that Leah gives the name Yissachar to her fifth son. Why? So if you look in the Psukim, there seems to be two reasons. You see, Reuven was collecting the dudoim, the jasmines, which were a fertility treatment. We spoke about it Thursday night. And he wanted to give it to his mother, to help her have more kids. And Rachel sees it, she thinks maybe these are the herbs that she needs. And she asks Leah for the dudoim, and Leah gives her over the head. Not enough, you took my husband. You also want my dudoim? And we gave a whole shot Thursday night. How could Leah have the chutzpah to say that when Rachel was the one who led her into the house? But the point is, Rachel told her, you know what, Beseda, you're right. I won't take both from you. I'll just take the jasmines. I won't take your husband. You could have him tonight. Tonight he's going to lie with you. Tonight he's going to lie with you. Fine. And Yaakov comes home. He expects Rachel to come out. Leah comes out and she says, Socher secharticha, I've hired you for the night. Socher, hiring. The Eibishter helped. The Eibishter answered Leah's tefillah. She has a boy, Yissachar. Why the name Yissachar? So Leah says, this is the reward. The Eibishter is rewarding me. The Eibishter is rewarding me for giving my shifcha Zilpa to Yaakov. Schari, Hashem's giving me my reward, so I'm calling him Yissachar. Is that the real reason she called him Yissachar? Maybe the name Yissachar is because Socher Scharticha, because she hired Yaakov that night. So the Rashbam says in number 1, Yissachar, why are there two shins in Yissachar? Shnei Scharim. There's two shins because there's two schars. There's two schars. Echad schar hadudoim. One of them is l'chayra. Now, it's hard to know if he means she was rewarded because she gave the dudoim, or it means because she hired Yaakov through the dudoim. But ve'echad schar shenasati shivchasi liishi. The other is taka, what she said. It's a reward because I gave zilpa to my husband. But according to the Rashbam says there's two shins because there's two rewards. Look in the Chizkuni number 2, he says the same thing. Nasan alikim schari ashenasati shivchasi liishi. This is the reason, when Leah was giving the name, people asked, no, why giving the name Yissachar? This is the reason she gave. She's not saying because I hired my husband that night. She's saying because the Eibishter rewarded me because I gave my maidservant to my husband. But Rachel also did it. Rachel also gave Bilhah to Yaakov, and the Eibishter at this point didn't yet reward Rachel with a boy. So what does Leah mean? Hashem's giving me a boy because I gave Zilpah. Rachel wasn't rewarded yet for giving Bilhah. So says the Chizkuni that what Leah said? He also saw Leah said you can't compare me to Rachel. Rachel gave Bilhah to Yaakov because Rachel didn't have kids yet. She had no choice, I had kids. So why did I give Zilpah? When Leah gave Zilpah to Yaakov, she already had 4 kids. For me, it was a chesed. I wasn't compelled to do it. So therefore, God rewarded me. But because of this reason, plus that she rented Yankov, Nikra Yissachar b'shnei shinim. So the Chizkuni says as well, why the 2 shins? Because of the two reasons. So far we have the Rashbam and the Chizkuni. Look at number 3, the Das Kainim, Yissachar. Yesh boy shnei shinin, he has 2 shins. Achas b'shvil mashmos de nosen lekim eschar. One, because Hashem gave me my reward for giving Zilpah to Leah, to Yaakov. Va'achas keneged Socher scharticha. And one, because she hired Yaakov. The same thing as the Chizkuni, same thing as Rashbam. But shehu loshen genai. The reason of Socher scharticha is an embarrassing reason. Ulekach eino nikras. Therefore, it's not read. There's 2 shins because there's 2 reasons. One of them we want to cover up. One of them, when Leah was asked, why you name your son Yissachar, she's not going to say the story that she hired Yaakov. That's a very Tosfos, Das Kainim from Tosfos, from Bali Tosfos. There's a number of commentaries from the Bali Tosfos on Chumash. Hadar's Kainim, Das Kainim, Teres Kainim, Moshe's Kainim. Yeah, there is Moshe's Kainim. Anyhow. So Tosfos says here, Tosfos says clearly, Eino Nikras, like Ben Asher. like Ben Asher. Tosfos isn't the only one, by the way. The Ibn Ezra says the same thing. Because the two shins are for two reasons. One of them is that Leah Yissachar Scharticha, and that's not a tznistic reason. So that reason where we don't want to mention. So
but the right way is
Yissachar. Azovi in Lubavitch.
how to read.
How to read. Yeah, we're talking how to read, not how to write. How to read. On a get, though, there's a shayla also about writing. On a get. Because, a get you have to write also the miskarya, the way the person's called. But in the Sefer Torah, it's obviously with two shins. Hold on. The Ibn Ezra paskins the same way. And many Rishonim, the Radak, Reb David Kimchi. You see, there's a pasuk in Divrei Ayomim that says, Mechatzitzrim b'chatzaitzris, to blow chatzaitzris. It says Mechatzitzrim with two tzaddiks. And the Radak says over there a rule, whenever you have two letters in a row, you don't pronounce both.
You don't pronounce.
Yeah. So just like Mechatzitzrim, you say Mechatzrim, you miss the second tzaddik. So too, the Radak says in the Ibn Ezra, they both link the Yissachar, Yisaschar to that pasuk in Divrei Hayomim. You only say one. So we have the Ibn Ezra, the Radak, Tosfos, they're all going with the opinion of Ben Asher.
There's many words that you do pronounce.
I know. But there's a... Anyhow, continues Tosfos, Dover Acher, another pshat says Tosfos, Mishum Hachi Eino Nikras, you know why we don't say the second shin? Yissachar had a son Yoav. If you look in Parshas Vayigash, when we count the 70 souls, Yissachar has a son Yoav. But if you look in Parshas Pinchas, Yoav becomes Yoshuv. His name changed.
So what is your...
Yissachar Zazun. Okay, son Yoav. In Pinchas, the Namen hat sich gebitten. In Vayigash heißt er Yoav, in Pinchas heißt er Yoshuv. Von wann ist gekommen der Shin? So... Says Tosfos, the shin went from Yissachar to his son Yoav. It says in Vayigash, Yoav. But what was wrong with Yoav? Amar Yissachar, the Tata said, Ein Yoav Shem Hagen. Yoav was a bad name. You ever give a kid a name and later you're like, that was a bad decision? We'll see why it was a bad name. I have two shins, let me give him one. Vayikra Shema Yoshuv, he became Yoshuv. V'hainu d'chsiv b'seider Pinchas li Yoshuv. The same person, he had a name change. He had a name change from Yoav to Yoshuv. Tosfos doesn't say why. We'll see soon why. But obviously, according to this, right, these two reasons are very different in why what's the deal with the extra shin. But according to the first reason of Tosfos, which is the same as the Chizkuni and the Rashbam, it makes sense to say that since one of the shins is for an immodest reason, we cover it up. We put it under the rug. We bury it under the table. And then we would say Ben Asher is right, like the Ibn Ezra, like the Radak, and like Tosfos Paskins. But what's the second reason Tosfos is giving? What was wrong with the name Yoav? So you got to look in number 4, the Chidah. This is the Chidah in the Sefer Midbar Kedemus. Yissachar Kara Lebnei Yoav. He called his son Yoav. K'moshe Kasav Parshas Vayigash, we're in number 4, like it says in Vayigash. But on Parshas Pinchas Ksiv Yoshuv, a name change. Pirush Rashi, Hu Yoav, the same guy. The cost of the Sefer Devik Toiv, in the Sefer Devik Toiv in Parshas Pinchas, it says, Shebeyamim Kadmainim Nikra Shem Elil Echad Yoav, there was an Avodah Zarah called Yoav, Ubishvil Kach, and therefore, there was going to Avodah Zarah with the Nomen Yoav.
Not to be confused with Oiv.
So, according to the Devik Toiv, who was upset? Not the father Yissachar, like Tosfos says, it was the son.
Why did Yissachar give the name?
I don't know, nicht gewusst. Yissachar hat gelernt den ganzen Tag. What does he know about names of Avodah Zarah? Ba Yoav lifnei Yissachar. Yoav came to his father, bekuvlana, with a complaint. Rabba, a huge complaint. Al shekina shmei b'shem Avodah Zarah. Why do I have such a name? V'nasan like ois mishmoi. So Yissachar said, you know what? I have two shins. Take one. V'hu heishiv v'nikra as v'hu ashin. Sorry, and v'nikra Yoshuv. Va'alkein nikra Yissachar ke'ilu nichtav b'chad shin. You know why Yissachar only has one? When you pronounce it, you only pronounce one shin because one of them he gave away. Ah, okay. So that's the expanded edition of Tosfos.
Who was the devil?
I forgot his name. I once knew his name. U'b'sefer Rabbeinu Ephraim al Torah Ksav Yad. If you look in the manuscripts of Rabbeinu Ephraim, The Chidah is well known, always quotes from he found manuscripts on Chumash from Rabbeinu Ephraim. Rabbeinu Ephraim, the werewolf man, right? The werewolf man. One of the Rishonim, the werewolf. And macht a student from werewolves. Yeah. I once had a big discussion with someone. Someone told me, do I really believe that there were werewolves just because Rabbeinu Ephraim said so? So I said, what do you believe? So he told me that Rabbeinu Ephraim was influenced by his times. So I told this guy, Fakert, maybe you're influenced by your times. I mean, you don't believe because no one believes in it today, but who knows what there once was? Anyhow. He writes in Ksav Yad Parshas Vayechi, B'soif megoine Ashkenaz hakadmoinim kosav. All right, he says, Yissachar nichtev b'shnei shinin. It's written with two. Kedei losim echad al Yoiv. In order there should be one extra for Yoiv. Shahaya mibon of Yissachar's son to call him Yashuv. Loi mar shahayu ba'alei yeshiva. Has a different word. Since Yissachar sat and learned, it wasn't just him, it was his kids. So therefore Yoiv was called Yashuv. He was a masmid. Why did he get the shin later? He wasn't born a masmid. You become a masmid. He was called Yoiv. Then when he deserved the title, he became Yashuv. So it's a similar idea that the shin came from the father, but for a different reason. Then the Chidah says, there's a Chumash printed in Amsterdam. With the Sefer HaChinuch, Yesham Hagod, there's Hagod in Parshas Vayechi. There's a note there, and it brings there from the Nachlas Yankov. What does the Nachlas Yankov say? The Nachlas Yankov was about 450 years ago. Rabbi Yankov Solonik. The family came from Saloniki in Greece, so that's their last name that they had. His father was the Masas Binyamin. His father was Binyamin, the Masas Binyamin, a big Rav. And the Nachlas Yankov wrote a sefer on Chumash, on Rashi. Now apparently he wrote. Now I looked in his sefer, I couldn't find it anywhere, but I don't know where. I don't know exactly where the Nachlas Yankov said this, but the Nachlas Yankov says, once you see this vart that Yissachar had two shins, but he gave one to his son. When did he give it to his son? In Parshas Pinchas. So until Pinchas, you have to read it Yisaschar. In Pinchas, he becomes Yissachar. Yissachar, yeah, good. So that Yissachar, maybe you need two shins.
Exactly.
Right.
But then you take it away.
To make into one word. Yeah. But, so this is what he says, and this would fit whether based on the Devik Toiv and the second shot of Toisus, or Rabbeinu Ephraim's word, because it's all the same thing. Yissachar was called Yissachar, until he gave a shin to his son, which was in Parshas Pinchas. So until Pinchas, it's always Yisaschar. Pinchas, it becomes Yissachar. The Shaila is in Pinchas, you read the word Yissachar before you read the word Yashuv. So, you know... No, so after you say Yissachar, the Shaila is, because you read the father's name first, you haven't yet encountered the idea of Anyhow, this is what the Nachlas Yankov says. What, to say this? Well, wait. Hold. So, in the 40th year. Right, yeah, exactly. I know. In other words, chronologically, he complained, Yissachar would have passed away well before the Yidden left Mitzrayim, in the early days. But the Vartas, I guess, you don't know it until you read that Pasuk in Pinchas. Until then, the Torah hasn't given away the Shin. Taka, it's interesting. Now, there was a major grammarian named Reb Zalman Henna, Reb Shloime Zalman Henna, and he lived in the times of the Baal Shem Tov. He was a little bit older. He's born in 1687, about 10 years older than the Baal Shem Tov. And he was a brilliant mind, and he lived in Germany. He was the man of Diktuk. He was huge in Diktuk. He wrote his first sefer, I think, when he was 21. And in it, he argues a lot on the people before him. He wanted to make drastic, major changes in the Siddur. And many people accepted his work, some people didn't. The Alter Rebbe apparently accepted lots of things that he did.
Like what?
One example, I heard this from Rabbi Raskin in London, who kocht sich in the Alter Rebbe's Siddur. You know that originally in the Tilas Hashem Siddur we have, it used to say, Nadoi Noilam, Yitzir Nivra with the Yud, Yitzir Nivra. And the Rebbe made the Yud into a Vav, and in the early Sidurim you can see that the line is not straight. It was the Rebbe Pasha took out, and they just copied it. They copied it. And this diuk, that it shouldn't be Yitzir Nivra, but Yitzur Nivra is from Zalman Hena. See all these types of things. And the Alter Rebbe said the Vilna Gaon, Vilna Gaon was also a major medactic, and he very much liked the works of Zalman Hena, in Trop as well, and the Pri Megadim quotes from him too. So you're talking about the biggest people of the next generation, the Vilna Gaon, the Alter Rebbe, the Pri Megadim, they're quoting Zalman Hena. The problem was that what?
He came to Tzemach Tzedek and he asked him about something, when he could learn something.
We just said. He just said that.
He wasn't here.
Oh, it wasn't, you said it.
But you could say it too. But you could say it. What?
He took the Sefer off the shelf.
Yeah.
The Sefer of Zalman Hena.
He said davening is one thing.
I don't. He had it was Eliyahu Bachur. I think it was Eliyahu Bachur's sefer. Anyhow, either way.
No, that's right.
Well, you heard davening.
No, it was Musar. Anyways, but Al Kaponim, Reb Zalman Hena lived in Germany, and to his luck, there was another fellow living then in Germany by the name of Yaakov Emden. Reb Yaakov Emden was about 10 years younger than him, but Reb Yaakov Emden was Reb Yonason. Yeah, Reb Yaakov Emden argued with lots of people. That Amchal, he was in. Reb Yaakov Emden really took it up with many people, and Reb Yaakov Emden wrote a whole sefer called Luach Eres, arguing on hundreds and hundreds of things that Zalman Hena wrote. Reb Zalman Hena wrote a work back, Michsel Teva, the cover of the Teva, to answer back to many of Reb Yaakov Emden's critique. Apparently, Yaakov Emden was everything. He was everything. And Medaktuk too, whatever was needed. Did he first decide to come out against the person and then he learned the wisdom? Anyhow, Yaakov Emden was, who Gadol from Yaakov Emden. He was the greatest of the great. Here's the thing. Reb Zalman Hena was accused that a number of the approbations, haskamas to his work were forged. One of the haskamas forged Mezuyaf. One of the haskamas were from the Chacham Tzvi, Rabbi Yankov Emden's father. Rabbi Yankov Emden's father gave a haskama to one of Zalman Hena's Sfarim of Diktuk. Now usually Yaakov Emden had a rule that if my father held of him, I hold of him too. But here he broke that rule. He tined that my father never gave the haskama, it was forged. Now that just added fuel to the fire. You can imagine added fuel to the fire. Reb Zalman Hena writes that I once traveled to Amsterdam and I heard Yankov Emden is coming to town. He writes this, he said, I went, and Reb Zalman Hena didn't yet see the work Luach Edes that Yankov Emden wrote, but he heard that Yankov Emden had all these kashas. He said, I found the guy, and I said, please, let here and now, let's discuss it. If you're right, I'll admit, but maybe I can explain to you why I think I'm right. And he says that Yankov Emden denied the whole thing. He says, I know what you're talking about. I never wrote any of those things against you. And Zalman Hena says, I heard from many witnesses that, he says that Yankov Emden denied the whole thing. And when I asked him to have a fair conversation, he gave me the cold shoulder and he turned away. That's what he writes. And he also writes, he says, I read through Yankov Emden's work, and he says, I was intellectually honest. And I said, if I find that any of his arguments are true, I would admit. But he says, so far I haven't found anything yet. He says, K'eis, I haven't found anything that I think he's right in. Anyhow.
Yaakov Emden was upset at him because he forged his father's signature.
Exactly. But he wrote Luach Edes has hundreds of critique on Zalman Hena. Anyhow, this Zalman Hena gets involved in the Yissachar debate. And he quotes this Nachlas Yankov that the Chidor brings here. That until Pinchas you say Yisaschar, and then from Pinchas you say Yissachar. And Zalman Hena says this is rubbish. It doesn't make sense. He said it's not like Ben Naphtali or Ben Asher. The debate started in Tveria 1100 years ago. Ben Asher said it's always Yissachar. Ben Naphtali says always Yisaschar. It's either one or the other. Well, you found a cute medrash, and therefore the story is a cute story, but based on that, to make a new psak where you'll end up reading it nishtahin nishtaher, according to the rules of diktuk, you're in no man's land. He said it's rubbish. It's rubbish. And then he says further. He says, one of the reason why kids hate diktuk is because when they're 4 years old, they get a sheet about all the rules of shva no and shva noch. And the kids don't know what it means. They bring it to the parents. The parents are just as confused. It's complicated, Instead of teaching all 10 rules at once, each year teach another one. You'll be much better off that way. Anyhow, but you have different types of shvas. Sometimes you have Yisrael. Is it Yisrael or Yisrael? If the sin stays where it is, it's noch. If it shakes, if it moves, it's a shva no. So this Zalman Henna said, you know why you can't pronounce the second sin? Because it can't be a shva no or a shva noch. Why? He says, if it's going to be a shva noch, just simple, would be Yisaschar, then the chaf would have to be a kaf. There's a rule that following a shva noch, what? It would have to be Yisaschar, right? Yisaschar. He says, following a shva noch, the letters of beged kefes, those 6 letters, would have to have a dot in it. So it can't be Yisaschar, it has to be Yisaschar. Maybe it's Yisaschar, but then he has another issue that would have to be something with the first shin, whatever the issue is. He says, because you can't have either a shva no or a shva nach, therefore you can't pronounce it. So he says Ben Asher is right, and boom.
In our siddur, by the stars, that's
Yeah.
based on Zalman.
Right, again, we mentioned Al Rebbe followed him.
Eschem.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Because if it would be a shva noch, then you
It'd
have
be
to say
Eschem, exactly, great.
Cheers for you, man. Cheers. Your alley.
Anyhow, so Reb Zalman Henna says, you know why it has to be Yissachar? Because you can't pronounce the second shin. It can't be no or no. So far you have the Ben Asher said it's always Yissachar. The Ben Ezra and the Radak paskin that way. Whenever it's double letters, you throw out the second one. Tosfos said that clearly in number 3. Zalman Henna paskins that way. So, is there another way to pronounce it? Well, you have the Nachlas Yankiv who says this whole Parshas Pinchas business. It sounds rather strange. Well, there was a great Chassidic master known as Reb Tzvi Hersh of Ziditchov. Reb Tzvi Hersh of Ziditchov is one of the greatest Chassidic masters in the times of the Alter Rebbe, Mittler Rebbe. He was known as the Sar Beis HaZoyar. It's a play on words. Sar Beis HaZoyar, the master of the Zoyar. He was a master Kabbalist, a mumcha in Zoyar particularly. In fact, the Malbim, the great Malbim, went to learn Kabbalah from the Tzvi Hersh of Ziditchov. And then the Malbim wanted to come to the Rebbe Marash to learn Chiddush Chabad, and he was given the cold shoulder. But he learned Kabbalah from the Tzvi Hersh of Ziditchov. And, by the way, Tzvi Hersh of Ziditchov in the Welt is considered one of the greatest of the great. Anyone that's an Einokul, they refer to themselves as Ziditchov Einokul. It's a very, very choshev family. But the Alter Rebbe writes somewhere that he heard from the Mezritcha Magid that Zman, the time, is a complete creation. Bereshis bara lekim, the Eibishter created Bereshis. There's a Taishi, Pasha created time itself. In other words, before then, there was, forget about time the way we know it. There's no inyan of before, after. There is no inyan of time. And the Ziditchova argued on that point. And the Ziditchova said he doesn't believe the Maggid ever said that. So if he would argue is one thing, but he says the Maggid never said it. The Alter Rebbe said he heard from the Maggid. The Rebbe Rashab once had the Sefer of the Ziditchova on his table. And when he heard, somebody told him that the Ziditchova says that he doesn't believe the Maggid said what the Alter Rebbe says the Maggid said, the Rebbe Rashab pushed away the Sefer. Didn't want to open the Sefer. He was hurt. But either way, the Ziditchova was a very great man, no question about it. And he had a nephew known as the Kamarna, Yitzchak Isaac of Kamarna, who was also a huge Chassidish Rebbe. And the Kamarna was a Yosemite who was brought up.
I didn't want to use Kamarna.
Okay.
I met one of
He was the Kamarna? The Kamarna Rebbe, that today when I was in Australia teaching there, he once came then, he was giving out dollars, coins. There was a shaila if we were allowed to take. He was giving out coins.
One of the commanders. not a Shulchan Aruch, but like something like a Pirush on the Shulchan Aruch.
Could be. The whole shalshelis of them. Anyhow, what? No. They ain't going from Shela. The Kapel Kesef Tamid Mekablim. Anyhow, so the Kamarna was a Yosem when he was a young age, and he grew up in the house of his uncle, the Yisaschar. And the Kamarna quotes often from his uncle. And the Kamarna writes like this. The Kamarna says Ben Naphtali is right in this argument. The Kamarna paskins in this argument, we paskin like Ben Naphtali. I, Menachem Dilun Zono, said 500 years ago, a Baskol came out from heaven and said the always halacha is like Ben Asher. Not in this argument. Here, the Ben Naphtali is right. You pronounce both chins, but you know how you pronounce it? Yissachar. That's what the Kamarna says. In the name of his uncle. Yissachar. 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 Yissachar is much easier. Yissachar. No, according to Zalman Henne, no, it could make sense. It's the other way that doesn't. Yissachar was a no-go. This could make sense. Yissachar. And he says he heard this from his uncle, and the Kamarna holds, whenever you lane it, you always say both shins. None of this Parshas Pinchas business, but it's always Yissachar. And he says that's the opinion of Ben Naphtali, and we pass him like Ben Naphtali. So the number of chidushim. And we pass him back Ben Naphtali. You always say double shin, and it's not Yisaschar, it's Yissachar. And he says he heard it from his uncle, the Yisaschar. Funnily enough, in some other Sforim, they quote the Yisaschar as saying not like that, but saying like the Nachlas Yaakov, the Parshas Pinchas business. The Parshas Pinchas business. So there's a shaila what the Yisaschar holds. His nephew, who L'chayra was his greatest Talmud, says he holds it's always Yissachar, always. And but other people quote, big people quote that the Yisaschar didn't say that. He said you do say the double shin, maybe even Yissachar, but it changes by Parshas Pinchas. There is a pasuk in Tilim, Yissachar pi doivrei shaker. It should be closed, the mouths of those that speak falsehood. So the Yisaschar said Yissachar, it's with the samach. Yissachar should be closed, like Yissachar in Parshas Noach. But he said Yissachar pi. If you say Yissachar, doivrei shaker, you're saying a lie. It's double. It has to be Yisaschar or Yissachar, double shin. So the Kamarna quotes this from his uncle that you always say Yissachar with two shins, Yissachar. And if you ever say Yissachar, you're a doiver sheker. But those that quote the Yisaschar that say it changes in Pinchas, they say, you know what? Yissachar P stands for Pinchas. Yissachar P. If you say Yissachar before Parshas Pinchas, you're a doiver sheker, you're a liar. Because before Pinchas, it's Yissachar, the double shin. So, there's two opinions of the Yisaschar, but they both use the same remez. They both use either the Kamarna that it's always a double shin, and Yissachar, if you ever say Yissachar, you're a P doiver sheker. And the others say no, Yissachar P is Pinchas. If you say Yissachar before Pinchas, you're a liar. It's Yissachar or Yisaschar, the two shins before, but it changes by Pinchas.
What's the base for that opinion? Most do shame over here.
Changing Pinchas is the Nachlas Yaakov. Nachlas Yaakov was not a Rishon, he was one of the Achreinim, but he's a big person.
Went by the, didn't accept command.
Yeah, I'm not saying we should do this. I'm the Zichzog, no, this is the Ashita. Then you have the Chassam Sofer. The Chassam Sofer said in a drasha, and he did this as well. The Chassam Sofer says, I take the reason of the Rashbam in number 1 and the Chizkuni and the first reason of Tosfos in number 3. Yes. That the reason there were two shins is because there's two reasons of why Leah had this boy. And one reason's not sneezed, so we cover it over. But the Chassam Sofer said the first time, though, you have to read it with two shins. Before you cover over something, you have to know that it's there. The first time, you have to say what his name really is. His name has two shins.
But we see that it's two shins. We know that it's two shins.
The guy that's laning, what are the guys that are hearing? What are those that are listening? Those that are listening.
Okay.
Yeah.
They told me the first time, so it said to why.
So the Chassam Sofer says the first time, we'll get to that in a minute. He said that the first time you say both. We'll see that in a second. The Chassam Sofer says in Parshas Vayetze it's two shins. It's two shins. Weiter we cover over. Like Tosfos says, ain't no nikras, but the first time you have to. The Chassam Sofer paskin this way, He did it. Ma'aseh b'poil and Pressburg, the Chassam Sofer did that. He's not the only one. Rabbi Yosef Shol Natanson, the Rav in Lviv, he says as well, the Yosef Shol Natanson says in the Sefer Divrei Shol and Chumash, the first time we do Yisaschar, like the Chassam, he says, the grammarians say that you always say Yissachar. Most grammarians, we saw the Radak, the Ibn Ezra, Reb Zalman Hena, Menachem Di Lunzano, they all say Yissachar. And they hold even Vayetze. Says Natanson, the Medaktikim are not Kaveh Halacha. They could be right in Diktuk, it doesn't mean that you have to do it that way, La Halacha. So he says the first time we want to say his full name, you say both shins. Afterwards, we dafka want to cover over. So you have this. Reb Moshe Feinstein said you should do this way.
Which way?
Like the Sam Sofer. That Vayet say you do Yisaschar.
Not
You say both shins. Then you come to this new machlekes. Is it Yisaschar or Yisaschar? So Reb Moshe Feinstein apparently said you'd go like the Chassam Sofer and Natan Zon, that in Vayet say you just say Yisaschar. You just say both shins.
People read like that today?
Yeah. The Sfardim lo shamu mizel ma'olam. The Sfardim always said Yissachar. They always went like Ben Asher. Yeah. Like Menachem Di Lonzano. Yeah, that's what they said. The Minchas Shai as well. The Minchas Shai, one of the greatest Medaktikim in the...
What do you do?
In the also the 15 early 1600s, he says the Minchas Shai also said it's for sure Yissachar. Right. The
we say Yissachar.
Right. So exactly the Rebbe quoted Al Pi Kabbalah from his father because of Zalman Hena. Okay. Yeah. All right. That's Rebbe learned. What?
What did you say about the
No. The Rebbe quotes from his father, Reb Leivik, that we don't say the second shin because Yissachar was a man of Limud HaTorah. One shin is for Nigla, one shin is for Nister, and the Nister we don't say, we never say. So Akaponim, so far we're basically going to wrap up now. You have Ben Asher, who said it's always Yissachar. The Radak goes that way, the Ben Ezra, Toysa seems to say that way. The Chol Asfardim, Chol Chachmei Sfarad, the Chor, they all say Yissachar, and that's it. There was never an Indian. Ben Naftali always says double shin, which l'chayr is Yisaschar, until the Kaman and the Yisaschar come up with this new business, Yisaschar. Then you have the Nachlas Yankiv, and also maybe the Yisaschar that say it changes by Pinchas. Then you have the Chassam Sofer, Natanson, and the Moshe Feinstein who say Vayetze is Yisaschar and then Yisaschar. But then it gets weiter. You have number 5. Dan, this is from Pardes Yosef. There's another opinion I heard from Ephraim Manala Shlita, Shesipur lo yabal koire bebeis med b'shalayim. What's the meaning of Ger? The Beis Yisrael, Ba'atzmai Omar, the Beis Yisrael, the Rebbe of Ger a couple generations ago, he told the Baal Koire and Ger that B'pam Harishoyne Shemusker, the first time it says Yisaschar, which is in Vayetze, Yikra Beis Shemus, do it twice, Yissachar, and then Yisaschar. Umisham ve'elech, only Yissachar. So in Ger, there was a meaning that in Vayetze, similar to the Moshe Feinstein, that you pass in this way, but you actually do both. You do both. Yissachar, Yisaschar. Yissachar.
He just said that. Or Yissachar.
Okay, so look, I think only the Kaman and the Yisaschar held of this Yissachar business. The Bnei Yisaschar, Reb Tzvi Elimelech Medinov, his sefer is called Bnei Yisaschar. And people there's a tradition that he held you always say Yisaschar the entire time. That's another opinion. According to the Reb Tzvi Elimelech Medinov, you always say Yisaschar. In other words, he paskins like Ben Naftali, that you always say double shin, but he disagreed with the Yisaschar. It's not Yisaschar, it's Yisaschar. And that's why his name of the sefer is Yisaschar. But there's one other opinion, and that is Reb Chaim Kanievsky needs to get a mention. So his father, the Stipler, Kanievsky. Eigentlich for the Mittel Rebbe. So his father, the Vater his father, the Stipler Gaon said that when he grew up, they used to, when they lay in Vayetze, they said Yisaschar, the opposite in Ger. The same idea that in Vayetze you say both, but instead of Yisaschar, it was Yisaschar. And then Vayetze was only Yisaschar. Exactly. What?
It doesn't work.
But the minig in Lubavitch, although there's so many different opinions, the minig that we do is actually the most, Al Pi Diktuk is the most correct. You're taking out Medrashim and this and that. Al Pi Diktuk, The Minchas Shai paskins that way. The Zalman Hena, Menachem di Lunzonu, the Radak, Ibn Ezra, and Ben Osher, and you have the Vort of the Blavik. All right.
You're gonna say that
So
we're
does
asking
the
for
name Yissachar?
And the Rebbe Lane only for
But does the name
Are you
Yissachar
writing somewhere right now?
doesn't come?
I have to quickly dive and then go teach.
And then the Alter
You
Rebbe
want to speak from him?
also.
Me only wanted to speak to you about some things with the community.
Yeah.
Well, this isn't going well.
No, Adarabba. Double down. I was supposed to text you before, but I texted you Friday. I don't know how long it's going to take. It might take just a...
Okay, we
it's
could
not to be long.
definitely start.
Yeah?
How do you understand from this straight?
What he's saying.
No. I yeah, no, it's not from there. It's not from there. It's from.
What did you say?
Thank you.
They taught
We quoted the Chida.
him laying Yissachar and stuff. Who taught him?
I couldn't find the...
Who told you that to do Yissachar? Someone told you. He said
About
do both.
Haruch. Let's see if he brings them.
Who told
No, this is on. Hilchos.
I have actually two different ones. I
When
have
you
one
were young.
English, one with the Hebrew. Very nice commentary on it.
First time.
It doesn't say.
Both.
He answers all the different matches.
So you said Yissachar. Which one first?
I don't know how he did it. It's really good.
No, the first time. No.
Medley, you said before we don't pass him out.
Which one first though? Yissachar
Everybody
Yissachar
quotes
or
from
Yissachar
Tuva
Yissachar?
That's
a deal.
Right? Didn't you say that?
That's what Natanson
That's
said.
what Natanson said.
On the other, that's his opinion.
What's the problem? Is that there's no Rishonim that back him up. So if you're going to go against people that are being Kaveh Allah, the Rishonim already Kaveh Allah. Hiskuni, the Rashbam, all these...
No, but the Chizkuni Rashbam didn't speak about how you pronounce it. There's only Toises that ain't on the cross. This Toises, he's not halacha sefer. It's a Pesach Chumash. And not just that. No. Natanson agrees that B'chlal ain't on the cross. The first time.
The Rebbe said it pretty clear. If I'm